Cybernetic management and the emergent frailties of capitalism. I am a cybernetician and therefore a libertarian. I am born free to understand the world and want to stay free to change it for the better, whatever that means. Modern representative democracy is showing signs of irreparable wear and tear and could lead to the cancellation of individual freedoms. Nothing to do with terrorism or a Cold War. Capitalism has developed emergent or spontaneous properties that could easily strip away our liberty. The solution requires systemic and cybernetic modeling. I will use universal management to illustrate the terrible mess we are in. The insights come from the teachings of Stafford Beer, one of the beautiful minds that created management cybernetics. As you know, cybernetics was born as a science of controlling communications in the post-World War II years, created to interconnect many other different sciences through the notion of feedback. By the way, cybernetics and governance mean basically the same thing. Universal management is the most user-friendly explanation of management cybernetics. There are many doors into universal management. Knowing more about how viability works should help us understand why our personal freedoms are at risk. So let's jump right into the problem. I start with a series of assumptions to help explain the threat to freedom. First, cybernetic assumption. Every human being can be described or modeled using three components: a mind, a body, and his or her relevant environment. The relevant environment is made of the things you own and the things you need to work and to be productive. For instance, your house, car, computer, phone, your shop, your farm, your business. That is the definition of a legal person, and also an autonomous economic agent. Both domains, legal and economic, go together. Second assumption, every mature and educated person is legally and physically capable of living an independent existence, that is, being viable on his or her own. Third assumption, people are in principle free to play, work, produce, speak out, as long as they do not interfere with other people's rights. Thomas Jefferson called it the right to the pursuit of happiness. Fourth assumption, people organize to achieve synergy collectively. Every man-made organization has the same basic elements as the individuals: a decision-making organ, a body, and a relevant environment. Building an organization from the bottom up means creating agreements to exchange information, materials, energy, products, or services. Human organizations are recursive, meaning that the whole and its parts have the same structure. Fifth and last assumption, the nation-state contains the three elements of all viable systems: a people, a government, and a territory where governmental powers should be exerted to protect everybody's rights and freedoms. All public functions beyond free market association become a new form of government. Now let's create a world model that is much easier to grasp and understand. Imagine a very large island called Ideal Island, where 10 nation states coexist. Each one has its own people, territory, and government. Except for one, the rest have developed a very specialized economy, which makes them highly dependent on a common currency. Here are 9 countries and their main outputs: energy, infrastructure, extraction, transportation, transformation, food, distribution, services, and telecommunications and computers. 9 countries began sharing as soon as they discovered that they could all benefit by exchanging outputs. Together, they can satisfy every need imaginable. The graph uses familiar names for mnemonic purposes, but no offense or stereotyping is intended. The 10th nation state is the bank. As always, very diversified and self-sufficient, and evolved to become the island bank. The banking service works as a coordination subsystem for the other 9 countries. It handles information and very little energy or material resources. It keeps tracks of transactions through the invention of a currency called green marbles, which reduces the hassles and inefficiencies of barter. Using green marbles makes international commerce very efficient. The banking economy has a very important emergent surprise feature as compared to a now defunct barter economy. The countries and people living in them can save money to spend it later. The banker can loan excess money saved by some to others who have sound investment projects and promise to pay it back with interest. Computers handle all the complexity regarding who has money saved and who owes what and when. Individuals or nation states that work hard and efficiently can save money for a rainy day. This is the universal management model representation of the apparent situation being described. The coordination channel takes care of banking, agreements, contracts, and standards. We could say this is the end of the story and everybody is happy. The UMS scan. Even though the 10 countries celebrate contracts between them all the time, they are just a group and do not meet the criteria of being a viable system. Using universal management criteria shows that the bank provides essential coordination to the 9 countries, but they lack several other functions needed to ensure the group's viability. The missing management functions are an assembly where all countries participate democratically to set policy for the group members to follow internally, and to make sure that everybody is clear on the values supported by the group as a different entity from the individual participants. A planning effort to look into the future to make sure that the system as a whole can adapt to changes in the environment that require new technologies, new production methods, etc. A director, synergizer, enforcer, execution function to enforce any joint agreements that are reached by the otherwise 9 autonomous or sovereign nation states. Also lacking is an audit or anomaly detection function which can inform the director and the members' assembly about things that are not working properly. A security function to protect the group from external and internal threats to stability and well-being. Stafford Beer's viable systems model says all organizations need these functions in place and working to ensure the viability of the group as a whole. Now, the question is inevitable. Is there anyone performing these vital functions in a de facto manner? Is there some sort of United Nations organization working in the background? Are there other pieces missing? Apparently, Ideal Island does not have any form of federal government or central government. Neither the people nor the countries elect anyone to act as the government of the whole group. However, the UMS scan reveals the existence of an underlying structure. It shows the bank has overstepped its simple coordination function and taking a de facto role as policymaker, although nobody appointed the bank to perform that role. An overgrown coordination system has totally absorbed or usurped the vacant management metasystem. The bank has taken control of Ideal Island simply because it has the advantage of the information passing through its hands. As they say, knowledge is power. Knowing who is likely to profit from new investments and who is likely to go out of business is very valuable information. The bank can make very safe bets all the time. The abstraction level of banking allows the bank to develop a sixth sense about what works and what doesn't. Internally, business experience is compacted, shared, and discussed in a very intense fashion. Outside, businessmen are unaware of how easy it is for the bank to be able to predict their economic future. How can this be possible? We're talking here of apparently fully developed sovereign states. What is wrong with them that they cannot see something which is so obvious? Are they collectively being brainwashed? Perhaps so. It must be some sort of inability to cope with the truth, unless there is something structural that impedes them from reacting to the banker's apparent greed and callousness. To unravel this apparent mystery, let's dig a little deeper. The story of the banker nation state. It is a well-known fact that highly complex systems that have a competitive advantage can become fed forward or accelerated in their growth and development, creating a snowball effect. It is also a fact that a small initial advantage can give a certain solution a very big head start compared to its competition. This helped the banker took his special place in Ideal Island. It took the banker nation state, the 10th economic agent, about 100 years to become consolidated as an economic powerhouse. You can say it invented free enterprise capitalism or made it work better than anybody else. Most noticeably were the rules dealing with real estate transactions, where it excels in having a very dependable justice system. The banker nation state had the good fortune to put 5 crucial things together. 1. A hard work ethic, lots of fertile land and plenty material resources. 3. Loads of energy. 4. An incomparable desire to acquire knowledge and experiment with innovation. And 5. Intelligent, synergistic government policies. All these factors or systems variables produced a vibrant and formidable, fed-forward, accelerated industrial system. The secret behind the banker's success was arriving early to economic prosperity with its own means and inside its own territory. Plenty of fertile land, abundant energy sources, and a hard work ethic combined with a deep respect for individual liberty, democratic methods, and huge investment in education to generate new knowledge. These factors created a massive positive feedback loop and turned the banker nation state into an amazing economic phenomena. It also consolidated this rather young country as a net exporter of high-tech products such as computers, lasers, patents, software, etc. The banker nation was so proud of its winning formula that it tried to export it to other countries. History shows the other nations did not understand or appreciate the favor at all. The drama of the 12 nations. Most of these nations were followers, not leaders, during the Second Industrial Revolution and its automatized factories. Neither did they invent the digital revolution. Their governments were markedly authoritarian, even if some of them adopted a democratic facade. Oddly, though, the bankers' government tried for years and years in vain to export its economic model based on a democracy of the people, by the people, and for the people. Most of the rest of the islanders had their own system and refused to copy the most useful and totally free technology, the political rules for conducting public affairs. The self-accelerating system of key variables was never in place in any of these countries. With any one of them missing, the whole economic system would get bogged down. Besides not listening to the advice coming from the country soon to be Ideal Island's banker, They produce their own ideology and massively brainwash their inhabitants to hate the free enterprise system of capitalism and all the rules associated with it. Both sides tried hard to make their ideas prevail, to the point where several wars erupted, hot and cold. Again, the efficiency of self-organizing free enterprise forces proved to be too much of an adversary as the high-tech gadgets became more and more decisive in the efficient organization of industrial production and a war machine. A Star Wars race gave two of the most staunch adversaries the final and decisive blow. By the time the state capitalists recognized the mistake, the damage had been done. Some are trying to copy capitalistic methods, but are still unwilling or unable to play by the rules internally. To this day, they make exceptions that will cost them dearly down the road. Other rulers just do not care because they exert total control over their people. After the socialist ideology was defeated, the state capitalists decided to start selling cheap labor to the bankers' country in the form of all sorts of consumer goods, and they seem happy to accumulate green marbles, which they are finding hard to spend, in return for the blood, sweat, and tears coming from their people's labor. Some countries live from selling cheap energy, the lifeblood of any country. The bankers own Ideal Island. The first impression you get from the banker's system is that it's getting its share of the pie because he is providing green marbles as a record-keeping service. He is getting paid for his services. It's just another form of exchange. It appears to be tit for tat, fair game. In the beginning, the bankers' currency that went into savings accounts of their clients represented real wealth, the gold standard. Later, the banker decided that the demand for his green marbles was so unlimited that he could provide all he wanted and come out a winner regardless of the situation, because the marbles cost him nothing. The banker is a practical and experienced man in the field of business, and he can detect a free lunch miles away. A banker gets more experience about good and bad businesses in a day than the common businessman gets in a lifetime. He knows that every green marble he loans comes back to him eventually, A, to buy stuff from him and still owe him the money, B, to repay the credit with interest, C, as slush funds or offshore deposits, or D, in the form of seeded collateral, natural resources, free work, etc. This is a game of musical chairs where the banker always wins the final chair and everyone else loses the game. He who controls the money supply of the world controls the world is an adaptation of the quote by President James A. Garfield. There is no real difference between the green marbles and the fake green marbles that inundate parts of the island. As long as a transaction can be made, no problem. The guy left holding the green marble at crunch time gets ripped off. So it was in the year 1971 the banker discovered the benefits of having its currency used as reserves for all other local currencies without having gold convertibility. For clarity's sake, let's say the banker discovered a mine shaft with a virtually limitless supply of green marbles and uses them as currency. The banker got a head start over all the rest of the islanders. It discovered capitalism, which bets heavily on the power and benefits of self-organization. It tips the scales in its favor. Now, the access to green marbles turns him into a banker with unlimited resources. He uses the green marbles to keep track of everybody's transactions, Banking is highly developed and its green marbles become the island's currency. Everybody uses green marbles as a medium of exchange. The other guys are not so developed and remain behind in the race. They now want to become like the banker. So they go to the banker and incur debt. The problem is they do not know how to play the free enterprise game. They bet on authoritarian government, on canceling freedoms, and charging high taxes to support the heavy government structure. The excuse they have is that since the people are ignorant, they have to be told what to do. Only very few know what is needed. At least this is what they say. For whatever reason, everybody in Ideal Island equates having green marbles with living the good life of the banker. Green marbles can get you anything you want in any amount if you have plenty of them. People in Ideal Land are prone to say repeatedly. In this way, the valueless green marbles become highly coveted, just like a highly demanded commodity. They do not do anything on their own, but they can get you anything you want. Or not? The thing is, nobody notices the fact that the banker is sitting on an unlimited supply of green marbles. He is absolutely rich as long as the rest of the inhabitants keep cherishing his green marbles. The green marbles are the carrot of the proverbial story of the donkey who would not pull the cart. The fact is that the banker is playing a very different game. He is not providing a financial service, he is running the show. He is in total control of Ideal Island and its helpless members. Every management function for the group of 9 is under his control. All these circumstances are noticeable in the feedback model of loops and connections. The banker sits right in the middle of everything that is going on of any importance. The banker's enviable position helps create the illusion that possessing green marbles is the key to the banker's success. Embracing that terribly wrong assumption, everybody keeps working in exchange of green marbles. As a bonus to the banker's good luck, or extreme competency to sell his own prosperity as a reachable goal for everybody, another tricky situation emerges in the banker's benefit. The fact remains that everybody wants green marbles so much that they even ask for credit by compromising future production or natural resources in exchange for green marbles. People, corporations, and countries agree to repay the marbles with interest without ever worrying where the extra marbles would have to come from. The challenge they face is to spend on infrastructure and produce more goods than before. Given the definition of a viable system, if the banker is capable of circulating green marbles in unlimited quantities and exchanging it for goods and services from the 9 nation states, then the 9 countries are part of the banker's relevant environment, and therefore he is acting as if he owns them, given that he borrows indiscriminately from them and can circulate more green marbles to pay back its debts. Specialization makes the 9 countries non-viable, that is, not capable of an independent existence. The banker keeps his operating capacities in a dormant mode, just in case. Another cruel fact of life very cleverly exploited by the banker nation state in its own benefit is that natural resources is a relative, not absolute term. They are valuable to those who can use them or turn them into something else. With newly discovered energy sources, the banker has been able to lower the cost of oil imports to about 1/2. Tragically, the result is shocking. The 9 countries try to run a profitable business. When they do not succeed, they end up owing their precious work or resources promised as collateral to the banker. The banker gets other people's hard work and scarce valuable resources for free. After all, the green marbles do not cost him anything to produce. The 9 countries' businessmen turn green marble credit into factories, bought from the banker or other economic agents. When they fail, they turn complete factories into worthless piles of rubble. One nation state, for instance, has spent 100 billion marbles trying to get energy from unreachable debts. Sooner or later, the debtor nation will have to turn over its real assets to the banker or risk getting expelled from the island. The tragedy of the commons. Now, finally, Ideal Island is running under one same system of capitalistic free enterprise and commerce between nation states. Some of these nation states are operating internally under state capitalism and or some cheap imitation of democracy. All nation states are oblivious to the intensive energy consumption production methods they employ. With carbon emissions at record level, an 11th player has entered the game and made its presence felt. The name of the 11th player is Mother Nature herself. Nature is the self-organizing system enveloping Ideal Island, including all 10 countries. To its detriment, all economic agents are now acting as if they each own a share of nature and its resources. As I said before, they are now copying the way number 10 emerged without any concern for poisoning or polluting the environment. But when everybody is trying to get the most of a shared finite resource, the systemic problem known as the tragedy of the commons becomes very evident. The free riders get the upper hand and defeat the environmentalists easily. All of them know that number 11, Mother Nature, fights hard to recover her equilibrium, but that there is a limit to what its natural self-adjusting mechanisms can do. But what the hell? The cell and the viable economy. Here is a model of a cell and its mirror image in a factory. The mapping is amazingly identical. What is true of the cell is true of any living being. The planet as a whole is a living cell, Gaia, with its own restoration mechanisms. If its equilibrium is broken, it might never recover, or it might do so in ways that will not be conducive to human life. The same can be said of the banker's Ideal Island model. It might just break at some point, and this could happen sooner than later. The system is totally out of balance, out of control, running on worthless marbles. In management cybernetics, we have to be very careful when we model a complex system. We must make sure we have identified positive feedback loops, which are accelerated growth loops, and distinguish them from negative feedback or error-controlled feedback loops, which stop the system from becoming a runaway train. This model shows the trap of the islanders on the left and the banker's blissful situation to the right. Money goes to investments which are best for the banker, and together they are driving Mother Nature to the wall. The banker's model of the island economy, which the banker exploits in its own benefit, is full of positively accelerated feedback loops. Just one single negative or control loop, but pretty useless. Experience and hard engineering facts say will tend to break or bankrupt the system sooner or later. What if everybody ends up holding green marbles but is unable to continue producing goods and services? Please press pause and take a minute to study this graph. It shows what the viable system based on the functions of a living system should look like. There are many problems with the current state of affairs. To name a few, the Icelanders do not have a currency or a government. The reinvestment loops are practically non-existent. Also absent are the recycling and restoring loops. Not enough time is allowed for nature to restore itself. The cultural, educational, and knowledge creation activities are currently misplaced and given to hardcore bureaucracies when they should be the most innovative of all participants. Energy reserves are being depleted at fantastic rates. Pollution is running wild, and crime is rising in many countries. The accounting system is everything but systemic, and so on. Military interventions are displacing audit channels and acting as world police at a huge cost in human and economic resources. Everything is fed forward. Unless corrective measures are taken, the system can explode or collapse at any moment. Economic hardships in poor developing countries are not resulting in revolutions. They result in rising levels of criminal activity. The young men you see above, some in their teens, are not wearing Tony Montana's flashy clothes. This other positive feedback loop also makes sense. Some laws act in counterintuitive ways. Even so-called revolutions such as the Arab Spring are not successful because there is not enough freedom culture. People fall very easily into the trap of authoritarian regimes again and again. Picturing the whole fed-forward system, we get that things as diverse as interest plus greed, ignorance, illusory goals, all contribute to make the banker system basically and eventually unstable. The only control system the banker knows to offset a crisis is pumping more green marbles into the system. Every time there is a crisis, the banker is willing to extend green marbles credit. On the other side of the equation, the autonomous countries are eager to get their hands on as many marbles as possible. The interest rate imposed by the banker or where the extra marbles will come from do not worry anyone. Unfortunately, the Icelanders turn out not to be very competent when it comes to creating an internally sustainable economy, which should be their first priority. That is the bankers' true and hardly mentioned advantage. All 9 countries seem to be running on the road to hell. Why? Because local governments are doing exactly the same thing to their own people. The model is a recursive model, meaning that the largest system houses other systems that work in exactly the same way. Of course, these minor systems are also stable because of one main reason. Neither the larger participants nor the exploited citizens get together to work out an alternative system. They do not trust each other. Without trust, there is no banking unless by force or the exploitation of greed. For now, green marbles is all there is to activate the island's economy. The bank's future. What keeps the banker in charge is that cultural changes take place very slowly. The pyramid control organization is widespread to the extent that people feel unsafe just to think that it might cease to exist. People tend to be democratic in public affairs, but autocratic in the conduction of their private businesses. The pyramid system of control is deeply ingrained and in a sense respected. Something tells people that the loss of control and collapse of the system could turn into a rampage of rioting and looting beyond anything imaginable. Rather than facing the unknown, many people find consolation in those who are worse off than they are. Some even look at the bankers' excessive military spending as a positive thing. However, as information seeps into the system, the chances of people finally realizing that the banker is getting a very costly free ride are growing by leaps and bounds. Several of the nation states are getting together to create their own currency. If they want to succeed, they must be able to generate absolute trust. Given that it means changing the old habits of those in power, then the green marble economy has nothing to fear in the short term, except a collapse from within. The collapse from within. We are back to the problem of democracy. The banker does not fear representative democracy. It is very easy to control elected representatives through their need for campaign funds. The political party-driven system is a system of vulnerable pyramids and has proved to be very stable for a long time now. A little money at the top goes a long way in an authority-based structure. Communications get garbled on the way up and on the way down. Pyramids cannot handle complexity at all. Anyway, so party leaders make the best of it. But neither the government nor the party leaders nor the bank have considered that keeping voters happy internally is being done by massive amounts of external debt, such as the outstanding treasury bonds representing green marbles that the islanders are sitting on. If there has ever been a conspiracy against Mother Nature, this is it. Shown above are the reserves in mostly green marbles of each country. The way out. Representative democracy is defined by the election methods employed. Imagine a funnel that gets smaller and smaller, acting as a filter of massive proportions, working against the citizens of every nation on the island, including the citizens of the bank. Elections using mechanical methods constrain direct participation. Only a few candidates can appear on the roster at the voting station. However, the new communications technology and the digital era can bring about a sudden massive change in the way elections are held and the way government is organized. Now imagine voting with your computer or cell phone or tablet. No need to travel to the polling station, no need to hold elections on a given date. Elections can take a week or 10 days, during which the list of candidates can contain thousands of names. From now on, it's the voters who run the filtration, selecting the candidates with the best profiles, not the parties, not the media, not the rich donors. Now imagine that instead of electing a congressman or congresswoman with an open agenda, people elect experts on each of the 1 up to 12 to 15 sectors of the economy. Collective intelligent methods would speed up decision making and improve effectiveness. The cost of government would go down at least by 30 to 50%. Bureaucracies would come to a screeching halt. A coordination system would absorb a lot of governmental variety. From those elected to each sector, also by popular vote, would be assigned to the higher management positions to prioritize investments, for instance, instead of the banker. The operations mimic nature's recursive organization at all levels. How long will this new system take to emerge? It is difficult to know, but we are getting closer and closer all the time. Thanks for watching the Emergent Frailties of Capitalism.